The Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum was launched to inform, inspire, motivate diverse talent to join the energy workforce by intentional recognition of current female energy leaders who contribute to growing Florida's economy and the purposeful sharing of their professional journeys. We are creating opportunity. Join me each week as we meet new leaders in energy and listen to their important roles in an industry that is vital to the country's future. Thank you, and welcome to this week's show. I'm excited about this week's show because we've got all things economic development. That's our discussion today. Very, very important to really drill down on how the energy companies are economic drivers of Florida's economy. So I'm with Danielle Ruiz, who's with Duke Energy, and Jennifer Taylor with the Central Florida Development Council. And Danielle, I want to start with you. You've got an impressive background in economic development and a long career in that regard. So tell me what you do with Duke Energy.
Well, thank you, Lila, for having us today. I've been with Duke Energy for 7 years, and prior to that, I've been in private and public industry and economic development. So I've been in workforce for the state. I've also worked for a local county government doing economic development, recruiting business and retention of existing business and helping them expand, as well as private industry and the medical device industry. So I feel like I've most of my career has been business development and really trying to establish relationships and bring a team together to provide the best solution for our customers.
And those are the opportunities that introduced you to Jennifer, I assume. And Jennifer, what do you do for the Central Florida Development Council?
Thank you, Lila. We appreciate you having us on today. So I'm Vice President of Business Development, and basically I work any domestic projects, whether they're corporate relocations or expansions, manufacturing, distribution, and really kind of put Polk County on the map and explain and show a company how they can thrive and grow their business in Polk County.
So obviously, as a lifelong Floridian, I'm very familiar with the Polk County area, very, very important part of the West Central Florida area. Can you explain to our audience how big Polk County is and why it's just really thriving, I think, and the growth opportunities there are tremendous?
They absolutely are. We're really very, very fortunate that we are located in Central Florida, in between two of the major metropolitan areas of Tampa and Orlando. So you kind of have a small town feel here, but then you can go 45 minutes either way and have just about every single sport that you can name, culture, art, even though we do have quite a bit of that here. Our population is really growing. We are now at 750,000 people, and it goes up daily, I believe. So we are the geographically largest county in the state of Florida. So we're a big county. We cover a little over 2,000 square miles, and we have 17 municipalities, with Lakeland being the largest.
Is that right? And so as part of your work, you've got to, I would assume, attract new companies into the state, be part of a larger team in doing that, but also help your existing companies grow their opportunities. Where does your partnership with Duke Energy fit into that?
Oh, well, every aspect of what I do, it feels like I'm working with Duke Energy. When Danielle and I are working.
She wasn't complaining, Danielle. That's not a complaint.
I know.
Yeah, that wasn't I'm sick of seeing her kind of thing.
No. When we're working a project together, it's not uncommon for us to be on the phone as we're traveling, before 7 a.m. and then at 10 o'clock at night, and then emails flying, all the way in between. The partnership has just been phenomenal. They are truly one of the best folks to work with, and we really consider them an extension of, we've got an office right here that Danielle's welcome to use anytime. They're an extension of what we do, and they're part of the bigger package of what we can offer. So without their partnership, support, and phenomenal knowledge of the industry, of course, I wouldn't be able to do my job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure, Danielle, you feel the same way about having this quasi, public-private partnership with economic development teams that really value what companies like yours bring to the table for attracting companies into our state.
Right.
And so, obviously we probably know a little more than most in terms of that issue related to economic development and energy companies. But for folks who may not have a full appreciation for that connectivity, explain how electricity prices and service reliability factor into a company's decision in site selection.
Right. Thank you for mentioning the site selection process, because oftentimes 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, there is a wide search area in a competitive site selection process. So whether it's being led by the real estate company within the firm that's looking for a new location, or it's a site selection consulting firm leading that search, we work really closely with not only the local partners like Central Florida Development Council, but our state partners, Enterprise Florida, for our statewide efforts. And of course, the consultants themselves, sometimes they come directly to the utility because of the level of power needs and the sensitivities that they have. So in addition to the rate estimates that we provide in that process, we're usually way in the front end. The earlier we get brought in, the better. So we're able to do reliability reports, rate estimates, but also looking at the sites that are available and having a knowledge about the infrastructure on the sites that we are submitting to the projects. Working closely as a team, both externally with our partners and then also internally with our team to really understand the full spectrum and provide the best programs that meet the needs of the customers looking for a new location. Oftentimes we are asked, why would a utility do economic development? And I think people think that because we're a regulated entity with regulation at the Public Service Commission level, that is really not a choice. But oftentimes what I say is when you have a company looking at Florida or even a region of Florida, there's not one utility or electric utility provider to choose. So we try to know the most that we can about our service footprint, be able to offer the best location for the prospects, and ultimately win the competitive site selection search with all that are involved.
Well, either they might, mistakenly think you don't have a choice, but the other thing they may mistakenly believe is it's not your role. It's not your job to be doing this. And what would be the pushback on that, Danielle? Why is that the wrong opinion?
Well, I mean, I think, the role of the utility, the most important role is to deliver safe and reliable power, right? But the behind the curtain approach is we are so ingrained in the community with our community relations efforts, with our support. And ultimately, our goal in economic development is to attract and retain jobs for our customers, our citizens within the regions that we cover. And that goes for our whole state. But at the end of the day, we try to establish those relationships, establish a trust so that we are brought in early on and we're able to deliver a full spectrum. And Jennifer mentioned, we're fortunate on our team at Duke Energy that we've had a tremendous economic development background. So all of us came into the utility from economic development, whether it was state or regional economic development. So we bring that project management expertise. So we're able to understand and appreciate the complexities of the request for informations that we get, which are oftentimes multiple pages, if not 20, 30 pages long, and really are hand in glove with our partners in the local and state economic development offices.
Yeah, and as you both know, I served on the Public Service Commission for 2 terms, and putting my regulator hat on, I would say the other value add, of course, is the more companies you add to your system and the more residential customers you add to the system, the better it is for the general body of ratepayers, right? So all customers benefit from that growth in terms of reducing rates and enhancing system reliability.
Exactly.
So it's such an interesting, fascinating, I think, interrelationship between economic development and the provision of electric service. It really is a wonderful partnership you all have. And so, Jennifer, Jaber Group wants to expand into Polk County. At what point? So I approach you and I say, I am looking at areas for my next expansion. At what point do you bring in a Danielle to work with you?
Well, pretty much, especially if it's a manufacturing type facility, and I know they're going to be a heavy electric user, we bring them in right away. In fact, they're very good. Duke Energy, Danielle and her team are very good about providing way at the very beginning of a project. They provide a letter of support to the company, not just outlining necessarily what they can do, but how they will partner with the Central Florida Development Council and with city and other local officials and utility departments to get the power that they need when they want it. So I try to bring them in, very early in the process. I don't think it's ever too early to bring in your partners and have them work the project along with you.
Right. No, absolutely. And we do have our first question, but before I get to that, let me just remind everyone else, this is a great time to go ahead and type your questions into the chat room. I'll see them and ask the question of Jennifer and Danielle. So feel free to interact here. So the first question comes from a viewer that wants to know what other agencies you partner with. And one of the questions I had for you, Jennifer, related to workforce. So let me weave both of those in. At what point do you intersect with the workforce agencies, for example?
We bring them in again as early as possible. If a company comes for a site visit and it's physically here, we always make career stores, our vocational schools, depending on the company's needs, and our community college. And we have 7 universities in Polk County. So, we bring them in very, very early. And, we also have an institute, Polk Corporate College. They have 8 institutes of learning, 2 of which one is advanced manufacturing and the other is supply chain and logistics. Being that we are in Central Florida, there are companies that use the training and the resources over and over again, and then they'll do customized training. Right. They just hired 200 people for the new core steel facility, and they put all of their folks through that basic training before they sent them off to other new core facilities to finish their training on the job. So again, just like the energy and the utility companies, it's never too early to bring them in. And we do make them an active, valuable part of the site visit because they can ultimately provide very in-depth data on the labor shed. And that gives a real-time look for the company on exactly who is here and who is available to work in the industry that they're looking at. So they're a big part of what we do, and it takes a team for sure. So they're another extension, I feel like, of our office.
And Lila, I think in economic development, there's really 2 main drivers that often come at the top with these competitive site selection. Workforce is one, which is a major important factor to any company, and also the location. So they'll have location drivers that we have to align with what they're looking for, whether it's a site or a building. And sometimes there's other components from a transportation perspective, a distance from a highway or a interstate or rail service they would need. So we really have to cull down the opportunities so that we can focus on what their main pain points and their main interests are to allow us to be top or one of the top locations to locate their new or existing or expanding facilities.
So Danielle, if you had to give me an example of one project collaboration from start to finish, what would you point me to?
Well, I think the most impactful from basically checking all the boxes for a site selection process, the ideal client, right? The ideal site selection process would be the Nucor Steel project that Jennifer mentioned. They had pretty specific site selection criteria. It was a heavy industrial project. And they were not only looking at the state of Florida as a whole, but they were also looking in the Southeast. So we were not only competing theoretically with other locations around the state, but really trying to find that ideal site that was low in wetlands, that was adjacent to rail, that was within 20 miles of an interstate, that had a workforce component that could support a heavy industrial type use, and an area of the state that would support that type of zoning and that type of operation. And I think in Florida, many of us don't think that Florida is the location for heavy industrial as a whole, right? That Florida doesn't come to mind as top on the list. However, it's an attractive consumer-based industry, a consumer-based state that attracts these type of industries. So Nucor was providing rebar for the Southeast, Florida, and then, to the adjacent states next to this Florida. So for us, we worked together. We got the lead came from the state of Florida. It was run by a site selection consulting firm, actually a law firm that was running the site selection. And it really came to the utilities first. Because of the heavy power use that they had, the demand that they had anticipated. And as with any project, you learn through, you submit some locations and you go through the process, and then things, kind of maneuver as they learn more about the sites and the locations. And ultimately, the site that was chosen was in Polk County, but that was not after at least 9 months of painstaking location decisions, right, and really leveraging all the assets that we had. We looked at sites that we had analyzed through our site readiness program, our Duke site readiness program. We pulled out the book of all the opportunities that we had available, and showed a lot of sites. Ultimately, they looked at 67 sites in that site selection process. Many of them really centered around about 75 miles radius around I-4. Once they really zoomed in. But, they needed transmission level power, transmission delivery power, and at 230 kV. So very intense industrial user from a power perspective, but also had a gas component and a water component that we had to find locations and provide the costs that would be required to bring all of this infrastructure to the site, because ultimately they did go to a rural part of Polk County, which South Polk, actually right on the line of Highlands County and Polk County, so the Sebring area and Frostproof, but really truly was a wonderful collaboration. Jennifer and I were talking about those late nights and with the consulting firms, and a lot of changing of kind of the requirements changed, and there was a lot of the decision ultimately, I think, is important too. When we talked about the knowledge of our communities and the locations and just the process in Florida that may be different than where other companies, that's what we bring into the play too. So you had mentioned the regulatory environment, Lila. We have, from an environmental perspective for Florida, we have unique species that other states don't have. And I think, not only do they not want a lot of wetlands, but they may encounter a big site, because ultimately it was about a 600-acre location, 400 to 600 acres that they ultimately really ideally wanted for their operations. That if it's in an orange grove or a vacant property for many, many years, it typically will have species.
Right.
So the relocation of species and the timing of identifying if the species are there really, I think, accelerated their decision making.
You know what that tells me, Danielle? There's an excellent question here that I see on this screen that I think we can build on from what you just said. The question is, have you seen an increase or trend in companies focusing on ESG markers in site selection, ESG, environmental,
Yes.
social governance, and it goes right to the heart of environmental sustainability, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to? So, are you
Sure.
seeing that trend,
Yeah.
ladies?
Yes, I can talk to you about the renewables side. I mean,
Mhm.
tremendous interest in 100% renewable, not a portion of my facility to be renewable, but 100% renewable. So really leveraging everything that we've done as a company across all of our states and our non-reg and regulated footprint has been a tremendous driver to the ESG initiatives.
Yeah, and Jennifer, so coming back to the specific Nucor example, because that's such a phenomenal piece of collaboration for both of you and certainly for your organizations. Nucor Steel, I'm not personally familiar with, but it sounds like a large manufacturer. So Jennifer, it brings the jobs element to
Yeah.
your county, the workforce. It clearly that's an example where they started with the energy provider, probably because energy costs were going to be a large cost component
Mhm.
for them, which made it a critical part of their decision on where to locate.
Mhm.
I'm assuming, Danielle, just because, you know, we've worked on these things in the past related to other companies, each of us in our own professional lives, that it mattered to them that there were colleges and universities so that they could reach into a skilled workforce.
Mhm.
I'm assuming affordable housing for their employees mattered as well.
Right.
So which or how did both of you put that entire conversation together? Because it's not every day you get a Nucor Steel, right, to contact you. So I'm thinking it's all hands on deck. We've got to make this happen for Polk County. Who wants to
Yeah.
take that on, or both of you comment?
Jennifer can really tell the impact to the community for sure.
Well, yeah, I'll just touch on it, and then I'll let Danielle touch on it as well. But yeah, the impact. So it's 250 jobs. One of the things too, before I go into that, is that they would not look at previous mined phosphate land. And Polk County, as you may know, Lila, has a lot of pre-mined phosphate land. And so several sites got thrown out, you know. So it was not only, you know, one day would be focused on this site, and then the next day they'd be focused on another site. And sometimes it wasn't a Duke site. It was, you know, another one of our energy companies here. So we were really just going back and forth until they finally honed in on that one site. So putting the whole team together, identifying who that team was, because like I say, they would send extended questions, really very detailed questions about the infrastructure and the utilities to follow up on. And so, you know, I would maybe be working with the city of Bartow with their electric, or I would be working with, you know, and then the next day it would shift to another portion of the county. So our team fluctuated and you kind of shifted as we kind of narrowed down the sites. But honestly, they've said many times that one of the attractions to this site that they chose in Frostproof was the fact that it was Duke served, which says a lot about Duke and the company. They use Duke Energy in some of their other facilities in the Carolinas, and have had very good, you know, rapport and good partnership with Duke. And so I think that also was something that kind of tweaked it for it to locate here at Polk County and at that site.
And I would just add that having willing property owners to sell their sites and having the relationships with those property owners was critical, right? Having those relationships established before these projects come to us with interest is something that we work really hard on. And not only with the site readiness program that we can talk about but also just with, Jennifer's group is a public-private organization. Public-private economic development has such a major impact on the whole community, and the flexibility to utilize private industry, private companies, as well as governmental partners to really showcase the county in the best light. So Nucor, it was a $240+ million investment into a community that didn't have very many businesses of size, of the industrial or commercial size. And so when we worked with the Regional Planning Council in that area to do an economic impact study that really showed the true impact that this project would have on that community that spanned multiple counties, of course, as well. So not only with workforce opportunities, but also with housing. Like you said, Lila, it does go into the residential component. So I think oftentimes when you see economic development, people say, oh, it's just about jobs. But it's an exponential indirect effect with construction positions, as well as residential and like retail, right? The retail. Right. Well, and then, the education component, that was so critical. I mean, Polk State College and several others that have partnered with them to help them get up and running with qualified workers. And Jennifer, the average wage is $66,000, right? Correct. So, I mean, really high wage jobs and they'll take people that don't have industry experience, the steel industry, and train them up. So having that in a community that doesn't have a whole lot of dense industry, it really was a major impact to the whole county as a whole and the neighboring county.
That's an excellent point. I mean, there's everything you just said, Danielle. My mind is racing now with additional questions. It's a fascinating area of study, because I think that it's not until years to come before you really fully appreciate the positive impact one company moving into a very rural part of the state like that can have on the entire state, right? And so the neighboring counties, the folks that may not have chosen to live in Polk, but they're in neighboring highlands. And I said education, you quickly, appropriately went to the colleges and universities, Danielle. But the truth is those employees that move to Florida because of the move of that headquarters are putting their K through 12 students into the public education system as well, I would imagine. So then you've got generations to come, hopefully, that become Floridians, and who knows what that economic impact will have. And the housing just, I would hope, promotes new construction, right? So you're being humble, Danielle, and I think that Jennifer would join me in saying that but for the good work that you all did, that might have been an opportunity lost to Florida. Absolutely. So congratulations to both of you and your hard work on making that happen. So we've got a question related to grants, Jennifer. I've got a viewer that wants to know, when companies like that move into your county, are they requesting or relying on any incentive programs that are available through your county?
Yes, very, very often these type projects do, because they are very competitive, and our competitive states are Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, sometimes Texas. So they all offer incentives. So we have to be offering something in order to stay competitive. So all of the incentives that we offer are performance-based. So they're not paid any money up front. There's no cash given. They have to create the number of jobs that they say they're going to create at the wage levels, and those are audited every year. And then they have to create the capital investment. So we give a portion of their ad valorem taxes an exemption. For Nucor, it was such a huge capital investment project, and with great jobs, that we gave them the maximum that you can give by state statute, which is 100% abatement for 10 years of a portion of their ad valorem tax abatement. But what people have to understand is that they're not getting all their taxes abated. It's just a portion. And then when they come, when that 10 years is over, they're going to be here forever. You don't just pick up and move a manufacturing facility like that. So what we reap is far, far more than what we give up. So, in fact, it was on our last referendum, and the voters here in Polk County voted it almost an unprecedented almost 75% of the voters voted to continue that program.
It's great. And
Yes.
it varies. I mean, we have stayed on the topic of Nucor Steel, but I would think that the opportunities will vary depending on the company and the needs. It just so happens, I would imagine that was the specific need of that company realizing, the space that they needed for their manufacturing facility. But do you have the flexibility to craft incentives around whatever it is the company needs that is looking at your geographic area?
Well, the one that we have flexibility with is a local one called the Polk County Business Incentive, and it offers anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 to $5,000 per new job created. And again, it's usually dependent upon what the capital investment is. That will kind of warrant which one of those programs that they get. All of the companies that get incentivized must be qualified as a target industry defined by the state of Florida. And so, that's really kind of the first thing we do is look and see, are they a qualified target industry? And if they are, then we start getting more details about, their capital investment, wages, and that kind of thing. And then we do an incentive summary based on assumptions. This is potentially what you could get if you located here in Polk County.
So I have to know, how often are you two on the phone with one another?
Often. I mean, like Jennifer said,
we're spending weekends together and dinner, and I've got lunch with her tomorrow.
Well, it's not always about business, right? We have a very strong relationship for actually nearly 20 years. We've worked really closely together for a long time. And, on your question about grants, it's to enhance the local partners programs and support to these companies. We also have an economic development rate rider that follows the qualified target industry, same for job creation projects and capital investment at a certain demand and load factor. But that really helps companies. I say like the sprinkles on top, right? It's especially for those that are heavy power users,
right.
But they could be applicable to any level. Most companies do qualify at least for several points of the criteria. But then we also have energy efficiency programs that are rebates on facilities and energy audits that are free to these companies. And, the sales tax exemption at the state level, that just for manufacturers, it allows us to be more competitive to other states. So putting these packages together, and like Jennifer said, they're all performance based. So if they don't meet it or don't continue meeting those requirements, no monies are offered. But in order to allow us to continue to be competitive, all these programs and support, really, it's because the programs and the incentives all run out at a certain point, right? 10 years
It's not a gift.
Right.
It's not a gift. Everyone is held accountable for it.
Exactly. And 10 years is a long time, right? Most of them are 3 to 5 years, and they have to perform to get that. So the lasting effect of landing these projects really is what the impact is. So that economic impact to the whole area is the important part. And I will say, from a grants perspective, the Highlands County, because this project was so close, they received a grant from the state for water to extend water to a location just on the opposite side of the Nucor location because of the support industry that's expected to come in addition to those residences that we talked about and the construction opportunities in that area. So, there's so many pieces to these economic development deals, and there's always a driver for these companies that you have to figure out in the beginning, right? When you initially speak to the lead person heading up that site selection.
And to your point, they start to serve as an anchor tenant for new industry coming into the region. Something you said, Danielle, I want to go back to and really give a shout out to this Public Service Commission so that it's not self-serving. This is after my time. This State Public Service Commission having the foresight to understand that these economic development riders really help the general body of customers, right? Because
That's
if you
right.
can work collaboratively to bring these new companies in, then you're helping the general service area,
Exactly.
which helps everyone in the long run. So
That's right.
that's what we mean by a constructive regulatory environment. That's just one component of it.
Yep, that's a great example of it.
And Lila, I think
Please.
it's important to say too that sometimes, existing companies, I've heard someone say in the past, well, what about me? I'm here. I didn't get any incentives. So all of those incentives are available for companies who are already in Polk County and who are expanding. So anybody who is creating new jobs, creating capital investment at a decent wage would be able to apply for those incentives.
Absolutely. And be willing to be held accountable that there will be this consistent job creation at high wage jobs, correct?
Right. Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Danielle, you're doing this all over your service territory. I mean, we're focused on your collaboration with Jennifer and the Central Florida Development Council, but I am assuming you have counterparts throughout your entire service territory doing the exact same thing.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and we, like I said, it takes a team. It takes all of us to collaborate together. So oftentimes, when the state or the local economic development group will get the lead, they will bring us in. We always say early on. But some of the programs that we've established at Duke really have had a lasting effect on some of the local programs that they've created as well. And I want to touch on the site readiness program specifically because when we do our evaluation, analysis, and identification of a site that could be prime for industrial commercial development, oftentimes it's not on the market. It's a site that we've put through a geospatial analysis to identify these sites with the attributes that an industrial or commercial client would look for, and then dig into it a little bit to see what the existing infrastructure is and what needs to happen to make it a site available and ready to have a building come out of the ground. So some of our communities have established their own localized programs to do that. So, and the point is to have some inventory to offer to a client that's looking for a site select, in their site selection process, so they can build the workforce as well as the inventory of sites to offer to these businesses. So, the collaboration and the recognition of how important and impactful a program like that is that the utility established. We established that in 2005 when the textile industry left the Carolinas and went overseas. We had a lot of vacant buildings, a lot of land that otherwise would have been utilized for opportunities for jobs and capital investment. So we had to create a program to really evaluate what we had to offer to then recruit new. And so that's spanned now across of our entire service territory. And we implemented that in 2012 in Florida, and have had over 30 sites, actually probably 35 now, that have been evaluated that we now use. And we have a lot of data on these sites, right? So not only have we evaluated and identified them, but we've also provided advancing sites. So that's a grant essentially to further the due diligence on those sites. So whether it's an environmental study that needs to happen, or a geotechnical study, or natural resources, something like that digs a little bit deeper into the location to provide that full spectrum of what that site has to offer to a potential project. So yes, we have tremendous partnerships that we work with. Oftentimes we sit on the boards of their economic development organizations as well. So our personal commitments and our leadership and support of these organizations go beyond just the project management and the recruitment of businesses, just to help overall the programs for each of the counties that we cover.
Thank you for adding that, Danielle. And I'm sure you both have had to partner with some of the state agencies outside of economic development. Jennifer, depending on the site, you probably work with the Department of Environmental Protection and Fish and Wildlife, depending on where that area is. Jennifer, I think it was Polk County. One of my first memories of Polk County, I'm not sure if it was Polk County or Osceola, is speaking about the site retention area, Danielle, and companies leaving, was the area that housed Circus World, and then which ultimately became Boardwalk and baseball, right? And I
Yes.
just remember all of that beautiful stretch of land that, of course, now is, manufacturing and warehousing, and all of that means jobs and economic opportunity. So while we miss the tourist location, and certainly it brings fond memories for me, but now, as an adult, I look at that and I see the economic opportunity for Floridians to come. So,
yeah, and just, having the I-4 Central Florida location. So you can go from my office and you can do a 100-mile radius and you'll reach 10 million people within a 100-mile radius of where I sit right now. So, that's why Nucor and, other manufacturers, we have a lot of food manufacturers because of Publix, but, it's just that Central Florida location. We also have more rail miles than any other county in the state of Florida. So rail served property is becoming harder and harder to find. And so I think that that's going to be a plus for us in Duke.
So we have our question from a viewer asking about each of your education paths. So let me turn it, though, into, there's a part of our interview where we get personal. Are you ready to get personal, lady? So, and apparently the audience is ready to get there, too. So, as you know, part of our effort with the Florida's Women in Energy Leadership Forum is to really demonstrate that there are so many careers in the energy industry, and economic development is just one area of expertise that, hopefully by now people understand just what a critical component it is to the delivery of energy service, right? So Danielle, let's start with you. How did you get to where you are now?
Well, I went to Clemson University for my bachelor's. I got a management degree and an international business minor. And really,
that's an okay school. I mean, they're all right?
Go Tigers. But yeah, I wanted to move to Florida. I originally grew up in the Northeast, and I did not like the weather there. So I knew I wanted to be in the South. So I just kept going south to Florida. And I started right out of college in the area that I live now, which is the Tampa Bay region. And I went to workforce. I went to the state workforce board to look for a job, and they ended up hiring me there. And that was right after
with Career Source Florida, or it was workforce.
Well, it was yes. So I worked for the Agency for Workforce Innovation before it turned to Career Source. Exactly.
Wow.
But that was just from a job. I was going there. I've heard that that's where I could look for jobs, and I met some great people there. And from that, I kind of moved through a couple positions there. But I met some economic development people in that position and quickly moved into a position that was opening up. I stayed there for 8 years. That was a county economic development department. And I learned a lot. That's where I met Jennifer, and I well, not in that same organization, but when I met her. And from there, I left and went to private industry and did medical device. But what you learn and the interaction when you do retention and expansion, like Jennifer said, how critically important that component of economic development is, really allows you to meet a lot of different industries and learn the different industries and what their interests are and what you can do to help as an economic development professional as well. And then from there, I went to another economic development group in Tampa. And that was actually for our audience here, that was because I wanted to start a family. So I was traveling a lot in the private industry, and I had to have that hard conversation with myself to say I loved what I was doing, but it just took me away too much. So I went back to economic development, and then shortly thereafter I joined Duke. So really a different path. And I was just very fortunate to have the opportunity in the energy sector, because I really, what I think is unique for the utility is that you don't necessarily have to have utility background. I'm not an engineer by training. But as you get exposed with projects like we do, you're forced to learn about the grid and about the network and what really is important to the customer. And so navigating a utility, we have 4,000 employees or so in Florida and several operations centers. But you learn a lot about the utility without having having that background. Now it helps when you have the background for sure, but I think the message is that if you have a willingness to learn and an ability to have trustworthy and relationships, you can have people on speed dial to answer the hard questions that you may not know. So that's kind of my personal story from a profession.
There's so many lessons there, Danielle, in what you said. Like many of our guests on this show, you've just demonstrated how you've remained flexible in your professional path. You didn't stay, one path. I have to do it this way. Right. You remained open to, a road that was going to take you where you were destined to be. And there are worse things than working for an energy company in the area of profession you absolutely love. So
for sure.
Good for you. Congratulations on your success. And Jennifer, what about you? How did you get to the Central Florida Development?
Well, I am a native Texan, although I've been in Florida for 32 years now.
You're a Floridian.
Yep, I'm a Floridian. And so what brought me and my husband here was a job at Lockheed Martin at Kennedy Space Center. And so we were both working. I was a lease analyst for a oil and gas company in Houston. And when, I went to Sam Houston State University, which go Bearcats. A lot of people don't know. Small
no
university.
Florida schools. What's the matter with you? That's the only bad thing I've heard both of you say.
I was a Texan back then. So I don't even think I've ever been to Florida. So we came here, and it was a corporate move. So the movers showed up. I had only been married about a year. They packed us up in Houston. It was a snowstorm. The last one was in '89 when I left Houston, was the day that we were moving. And they just had their other one last week. Yeah. But so we came to Florida. We, started doing a lot of bass fishing and drank a few beers here and there and just had a ball.
And the rest was history.
And then on Monday, he got up and went to work, and I thought, I don't know where I am, because this was pre-internet. So I knew, and I was in Titusville. That's where they had us. Yes. And so I thought, is this it? And then I looked in the newspaper, because that's what you did at the time, and I saw a lot of jobs for $5 an hour. Mm-hmm. And I think I probably cried a little, teared up, because I thought, oh my gosh, what have we done? How am I ever going to make the salary that I was making in Houston? So I got in my car and I drove, and I saw a staffing agency, and I knocked on the door and went in and took a few tests, and within I think a day or two, they had me at different locations. One of the third place that I worked temporarily for 3 weeks was the Economic Development Commission of Florida Space Coast. Yeah. And they were going through a reorg at the time. Mm-hmm. And so they had all these grand plans for hiring new people, and they said, just hold on, we'll call you. And so I got a call one Sunday night, and they said, I don't know what benefits are, but here's your salary if you can start. And I said, I'll be there tomorrow. And was there for 10 years before my husband accepted another position in Tampa. And then I did regional 7-county economic development. That's where I met Danielle. Pinellas County was one of my counties, as was 6 others. But I was there for almost 16 years when that organization pivoted to a different type organization, focused more on public policy and advocacy. Mm-hmm. So our Sarasota was one of my counties. I got a call from their CEO saying, well, I've got a position available here. So I was there for about 19 months. And then Polk called me 4 years ago, and I feel like I'm home. Polk County is like Texas, and I loved Sarasota, but it was very different. Beautiful, of course. But boy, when I came here, I packed up my house that I had been in Tampa for 21 years and bought me a home on one of the 555 lakes in Polk County.
Exactly. Beautiful Polk County. Good for you. Yeah. Well, welcome home. We like exactly where you are. Ladies, I could do this with the two of you forever. Really, I feel like we need a part 2. You were both so accomplished, so delightful. But I have to ask you this. So I feel like we've covered resilience, Jennifer, with that wonderful story you just gave about your transition from Texas to Florida. And we really should acknowledge the plight of Texans right now. They've gone through a terrible time last week and this week with the storm. So our prayers go out to each of them struggling right now with getting electricity back, getting their water back. And I don't know what better example of how essential and critical essential services and critical infrastructure is.
Yes.
My only fear always when we talk about these industries is when we move away a little bit from these tragedies, we can forget. But we ought not forget just how critical this infrastructure is. But I want to ask the two of you, what advice would you give to a second-year college student looking to enter into the energy industry? And Jennifer, I'm going to include you in this too, because you've been around these issues enough to know what exactly might be needed. So let's start with you, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you. So what I tell one of my mentees here at the Central Florida Planning Council, no, I don't work for them, I work for the Development Council. What I've always told him is that in economic development, there's no room for ego. You work with a diverse group of people, and don't ever for 1 minute think that you know more than collectively everybody does. I've been doing this 30 some odd years, and I literally learn something new every single day. So I would say, listen to what others who are in the industry, what advice they have, take that advice, and just continue to keep learning every single day. You're never too old to learn new things.
Well said. So
Thank
well
you.
said. Well said. Danielle.
Well, I have had some people reach out that are second-year college students that typically are in maybe the energy sector, and I think my biggest learning lesson when I was there, and I graduated from college with right before 9/11 hit, and so the job market was not great, and I moved to a state that I didn't know anybody, and I think having an open mind and really establishing relationships early on and being open to opportunities that may not be exactly what your degree has provided, but putting yourself out there, learning new things like Jennifer said, and being part of maybe some industry groups or seeking internships or just getting exposed to different industries to really broaden your knowledge base, especially when you have limited knowledge in the professional career that you're trying to acquire years down the line. So just, really getting involved in committees and just different groups that college offers, but also in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I heard humility, I heard flexibility,
For sure.
I heard being willing to adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And boy, you two are just wonderful examples of that. Would you please do me a favor and promise me? I have a feeling you both are working on something, a new project, and you're not allowed to announce it yet. So would you promise to come back and break that news here, right here with me and with our audience?
Oh, that'd be fun. Sure.
That would be fun. Yeah. It's not quite
Yeah.
a promise, audience, but I think that we're going to have these two ladies come back and be with us for round 2 of this. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Thank you for your leadership. And Danielle, you're a rock star. You're a rock star. Thank you for everything that you do. We'll see you next time.
Thank
Bye,
you.
bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.